The Adventures of Anansi and the Talking Tree. King Ose was known not just for his wealth, but for his prized possession, the gong drum. This was no ordinary instrument. It was a talking drum that could answer any question and recite the history of their people in a voice as clear as a running stream. The king loved to parade it, showing off its magic to visitors. One day, Kweku Anansi, the small, spindly spider, arrived at the court. He stood quietly in the back, listening to the king boast. When finally asked for his opinion, Anansi stroked his chin. "It is a fine drum, your Majesty," he said, his voice slow and thoughtful. "But I have heard whispers of something far rarer, something that makes a mere drum seem ordinary." The king's smile vanished. King Ose, his face turning a dark shade of royal purple, demanded to know what Anansi spoke of. "How can anything be rarer than the gong drum?" he bellowed. Anansi feigned surprise. "Why, the talking tree, your Majesty. A living tree, rooted in the ground, that speaks wisdom in every language." The king scoffed, but a dangerous glint entered his eyes. "If you can bring me such a tree, Anansi, the gong drum is yours. But if you fail, if you waste my time with more foolish spider tricks, I will feed you to my pet mongoose, Kojo." Anansi bowed, his tiny heart thumping against his ribs. The stakes were set, a priceless treasure or his life. Anansi didn't venture into the deep jungle. He simply walked to the edge of his village and found a massive, hollow Iroko tree. He quickly drilled a single, small, almost invisible hole near the base. He then called for his smallest, most reliable son, Ntekuma. "You must be brave, my son," Anansi whispered, handing Ntekuma a coconut shell and a small stick. "Hide inside this hollow trunk. When I tell the tree to speak, you must tap this shell with the stick to mimic a deep, woody voice. You are the tree's secret wisdom." Ntekuma, terrified of the dark space and the king's wrath, reluctantly crawled inside. With his trick ready, Anansi used rope and sheer determination to drag the enormous Iroko tree toward the king's palace. He walked slowly, deliberately making a spectacle of the difficult journey. As he struggled, he spoke loudly to the seemingly inanimate tree. "Why must you be so stubborn, great tree? You speak of great wisdom, yet you refuse to move faster for a simple spider." The court attendants, peering out from the palace walls, whispered and pointed. King Ose himself watched from his balcony, his arms crossed, waiting for Anansi's inevitable failure. Anansi smiled internally, the anticipation was half the trick. Anansi finally hauled the tree right up to the king's throne. A huge crowd had gathered, eager to see the trickster exposed. Anansi took a dramatic breath. "Mighty tree of ages," he commanded, his voice booming. "Speak to King Ose. Tell him of the deepest secrets of the sky." Silence. The crowd murmured. The king let out a booming laugh. "Your life is forfeit, spider. Your tree is mute." Anansi didn't flinch. He grabbed his axe. "You betray me, stubborn wood. I will chop you down and burn your silence." Inside the dark, stuffy trunk, Ntekuma heard the threat. Thinking he was about to be burned alive, he tapped the coconut shell desperately and cried out, "No, father. Not the fire." The king froze. The crowd gasped, a collective sound of pure astonishment. That sound had come from the tree. King Ose stepped closer, or replacing fury. "Great talking tree," he whispered respectfully, "tell me, what is the most valuable thing a king can possess?" Anansi gave Ntekuma a prearranged signal. The small spider inside hit the coconut shell slowly, and in a deep, hollow voice, Ntekuma replied, "Patience. For patience waits where power cannot reach." The answer was profound, and the crowd immediately began to praise the tree's undeniable magic. The king, overcome by the tree's perceived majesty, was completely won over. Completely convinced that Anansi had discovered a living wonder, King Ose immediately ordered his guards to transfer the gong drum to Anansi. The talking tree is a treasure worthy of a kingdom, the king declared, already plotting where to place it in the royal gardens. Anansi accepted the prize drum with a perfect show of humble gratitude, bowing so low that his head nearly touched the ground. He quickly lashed the drum to his back, thanked the king profusely for his great generosity, and began to back away, careful not to look too eager. The prize, the king's most powerful and valuable possession, was finally his. Anansi was barely 100 yards from the palace gates when a curious junior guard, wanting to see how a tree could speak, pressed his ear against the Iroko trunk. He heard a tiny, muffled sneeze. He investigated the small, hidden hole and discovered a terrified Ntikuma, blinking in the sudden light, still clutching the coconut shell. The guard raced back to the king. The realization struck King Ose like a thunderclap. He had been completely, utterly tricked. He roared, ordering his fastest runners to pursue Anansi. But it was too late. Anansi, sitting safely atop a distant hill, was already happily beating a complex, joyous rhythm on his new, genuinely magical gong drum.